Hi everybody. This is a video tutorial on using the Writing the Ox web application. You can see this tab that's open currently. It's called Writing the Ox. If you want to know how to get to the web application, see the links in the description to this video. I can assume that you're already there. And just made it full screen. So one of the first most important things to notice here is that along the towards the top of the screen, at the very top of the screen, is a nice little quote from Confucius. This is actually the opening line in the Analects. Isn't it a pleasure to study and to practice what you have learned? If that doesn't apply to you, then this might not be the tutorial for you. But among these selections up here, I'm going to click on one of these pretty soon. But first, let's see what it says in this helpful little blue area here. It says click on any button above to select the text to be displayed. The text to be displayed is referring to this area over here, which currently is displaying Master Wee Song's Song of Dharma Nature, which is a very beautiful, very poetic summary of the Avatamsaka Sutra written by the great Korean teacher Wee Song. And that's what it says down here. It says currently, the current selection is Wee Song. See, this button here is yellow. The button that is yellow is always the one that has been selected. And that corresponds to this, and that means that it's displaying all over here. This third bullet point in this blue field here, this third bullet point says, oh, you can also click on the help button. So if you were to click on the help button, a written tutorial appears, and I'm going to kind of follow what's in here, but I'm not going to strictly follow what's in that written tutorial. But so like in that written tutorial, which you can get to by clicking on the help button at any time, and it opens up the help page in a new tab, so you'll still be able to go back to where you were in the application. I'm going to go directly to a different selection, not Wee Song's Song of Dharma Nature, but rather the text of the Four Great Vows, which is also the subject of a online class that I'm currently teaching. So I click on this button, it turns yellow. You can see it's now yellow, and the text over here in the big blue, in the big aquamarine-ish field over here, is now the text of the Four Great Vows. This is, if you hover over a character, the character will turn blue. The character becomes highlighted in a light blue. Also, the translation, the English translation of that particular line that you're currently on, becomes appears in a little tooltip. So this line is just the title of the Four Great Vows, which is Four Great Vows. That's the title of the Four Great Vows. The second line is a very kind of a literal English translation of the first vow: everything born, no boundary, vow, liberate. Okay, well, that comes later. Let's just click on this particular character here. I'm going to click on it, see what happens. And a lot of this tutorial isn't completely necessary. You can just go to this website, which hopefully I already said this, but in the description of the video, there will be prominently displayed at the very top of the description a link to this web application. When you click on a character, and you can just click around and see what happens, which is kind of what I'm going to be doing in this tutorial. When you click on a character, over here in this field, now we see the character written again. We see the pinyin, that is the Mandarin pronunciation of the character. We see a bunch of places, kind of, it may or may not make sense to you, probably won't. where you'll find this character. And then there's the meaning or the definition of the character. That's all displayed in this top field. Below that is another field, and it says the components of the character. And so this character, this C character, or S, something like S, if I knew how to pronounce Mandarin, this has two components, and you can click on each of these. See, they become blue when I hover over them, and therefore, in theory, you could click on those and get the same information that we're looking at for the character for 4. There's also one character in the database currently has about 1,500 Chinese characters in it. Well, more like 1,450. It'll be over 1,500. No, wait a minute, 1,350. It'll be over 1,400 soon. Anyway, there is one character that contains this character, and we will see cases where both where there are many more components and when there are many more characters of which the current character is a component. Before we get to that, let's look down here, down towards the bottom of the page in this green square down here. And here the same character is written once again, larger. And this is where the stroke order animation of the character will appear. And so I'm gonna make the screen a little bit bigger now, so that we can see this field over here. Let me resize the screen back to normal size again. Here is where the stroke order animation appears. Down here, in this little green bar down at the bottom of the page, it says click here to animate. So I mean, like, how hard is that to understand what it means? It means if you click this button over here now, the animation is appearing. And now I'm going to make the screen a little bit bigger, just so we can see that animation a little more clearly. One, two, three, four, five. 5 strokes. So this is a pretty simple character. This is a pretty simple example of what's here. Let's make it a little more interesting. Let's go to the first character in the second line. This is these two characters together, and I'm currently got my mouse over. This is the character for all or every or many. This is the character for born or birth or alive. These two characters together mean everything that is born, everything that's alive, or all sentient beings. And so let's click on this first. This is a kind of a funny looking character, actually. I'm going to click on it, and now you see all the information over here has changed. The character is pronounced something like Zhang. There's different locations. And here's its meaning: masses, people, multitude, crowd, everyone. It's a variant of another character, which we won't really talk about, but these are all information included in its definition. And here are the components. It's made up of 2 components. One of these components can be broken down further. So it has this field down here has both the components, and then if those components, if the main components of a character can be broken down further, then subcomponents. If those subcomponents can be broken down further, it'll show those as well until it's gone down to wherever I gave up entering in the different components for characters. In this case, there are no characters that contain this Zhang character for masses, people, multitude, crowd, everyone. And let's look at the stroke order animation for this. A bit more involved in the stroke order animation for the last one. I intentionally put in configuration for the stroke order animation so that it would be relatively slow. The stroke order animation is not something I wrote myself. It comes from something called Hanzi Writer, and if you just Google Hanzi, Hanzi, which is the Chinese word for Chinese character, Hanzi Writer. Anyway, so let's get a little more. Um, this is character for boundary. So now I'm over here again in the big text field. I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to click on one of the components. There are a lot of components to choose from. This component right here. So this is the component way. It means closure, to surround, or encircle, or just circle. And so in this field down here now, you can see that there are, this is the field that is labeled characters that contain way. There's lots of them. In this particular instance, even though in theory you can break down any character into its individual strokes, but for the most part in this web application, I don't go into that great detail. I try to stop breaking things down when you get down to things that are meaningful. So individual strokes usually don't have any particular meaning. So for that reason, in this instance, the individual strokes of this character, of which, how many strokes are there? Well, let's look and see. 1, 2, 3. I'll do that again. Again, I'm looking down here at the click here to animate button, the green, bright green button down at the bottom of the page. If I click on that, then the stroke order animation appears over here. And I see that it has, one more time, 1, 2, 3 strokes. And so I don't, those aren't considered necessary. I wouldn't consider them to be components of a component, or what I'm kind of semi-arbitrarily designating as component, is something that still has some level of meaning. If I click on one of these, there's actually quite a few interesting, well, look at this. Of course, the very first character that we looked at, C, which means 4, is a character that contains this component. This was one of the components we could have clicked on. Now, see, let's go back here. Let's do something a little more interesting. Let's look at the second component, and that is air. This is a bit of a, this character exists as a component in traditional Chinese characters. It also exists as a character in simplified Chinese characters. Unfortunately, there's both simplified and traditional Chinese characters. For the most part, I'm focused on traditional Chinese characters, which is what you'll usually find when we're looking at Buddhist texts and writings about Buddhism. Even that isn't guaranteed, but it's usually the traditional characters. Again, this character only has 2 strokes. I'm going to go down here. See, I'm looking again at the area where the stroke order animation appears, and I'm clicking on the button to animate, and it just has 2 strokes. 1, 2. Do it again. 1, 2. All right, so those strokes don't count as components. So there's nothing appears in the field that says components of the field, whereas there are a bunch of characters that do contain this character as a component. We've already seen one, which is the very first character in the 4 Great Vows that just means 4. That contains these 2 little legs inside of the enclosure. Yeah, so I gotta take a phone call.